Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hello and welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Lawton. I'm here today joined with John Sloan, who is the Director of Business Development for the Material Handling Division at SpaceGuard Products. You guys may remember from one of our ProMat recap episodes and one of our episodes from the ProMat floor, we actually spoke to Eddie Murphy, who is the president of SpaceGuard Products. He gave us a little insight into SpaceGuard and what is it that they do. But today we're going to talk to John more in depth about what SpaceGuard is all about. We're also going to get into some safety topics and how SpaceGuard helps to prevent safety issues and also help to alleviate safety issues from reoccurring. So as everybody knows out there, I'm sure, in the warehouse, distribution centers, transportation, logistics, arenas, safety is a very, very big deal. And it should be, if it's not, it should be your top priority. So John, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, happy to have you. Definitely. I loved talking to Eddie at ProMat, so I'm happy to be talking to you guys again.
He's an easy guy to talk with and an easy guy to follow.
Yeah, and the name is like right away icebreaker, right?
That it is. He gets confused. If you're talking to him on the phone, you might get him confused, but you get to see him in person, and that goes away pretty quick.
Yes, I can agree. All right, so why don't you tell us, I guess, a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with SpaceGuard?
Sure. So I've been in the material handling world for about 16 years now. Started off in the industrial market, actually with a company you might have heard of called Big Ass Fans.
Very
massive.
Familiar.
So started off with that group when they were in their infancy. And then a few years later, I went over to Cubic Designs and spent the better part of 13 years in the mezzanine side of the world, doing all sorts of platforms and steel structures throughout the United States and even some internationally.
Okay.
And then I actually took a leave of absence last summer to kind of figure out what the next chapter of my life was. And I had an opportunity. Eddie reached out to me. He and I had worked together on a number of projects, one of which was the year before, a rather large and complicated project. And the more I talked to him, I got a feel for what SpaceGuard stands for, what the products can do, and it was just a real good fit. Great group of people that play both inside and outside at the company, and felt like a good fit. And 8 months later, I'm still loving what I do.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about SpaceGuard? What is, for people that aren't familiar with SpaceGuard products, what is it that you guys do, and what's, I guess, your overall mission as a company?
Sure. So SpaceGuard Products, we are in the wire partition realm of the world. So we do both a welded wire, which is, we've termed our Beast Wire. It's a welded wire product, and we use that for all types of solutions, from caging to rack safety, tool cribs, tenant lockers, things of that nature. There's also a longer standing line. The Ford Logan line is our woven wire product. And that legacy line goes back over 70 years. And it is a kind of an industry leader, if you will. We're the only unimesh woven wire provider out there, meaning that Our 1.5 wire mesh, wire diamond is a true 1.5 throughout the entire panel. And that's kind of set the industry standard. And like I said, it's been around for years, used for many of the same types of solutions, though we don't use it on the rack safety. We quite frequently will use it interchangeably on things like lockers, tool cribs, things of the sort, in addition to things like tactical lockers, if you will, gun storage, weapon storage, things along those lines. Based in Seymour, Indiana, right off of I-65, and we are proud to be a 100% American company. So all of our materials are sourced regionally. It's all handcrafted, welded, woven in the U.S. So we're pretty proud of the fact that, among others, we are a 100% U.S. product. And really, I'll tell you, the goal of SpaceGuard, in many ways, is our two biggest are customer service. That's one thing that Eddie's very passionate about, is how do we best service the customer, whether it's being the quickest to respond to our dealers or distributors, resellers, to also making sure that the end user is getting the highest quality product they can. That's something that he's passionate about. In addition to that, it's the innovation. It's easy to look at a product like we have, and we have some great competitors out in the field that still make a quality product. How do we stand apart from them? Instead of being a me too, what do we do to be a little bit different? And so things like our patented gripper bracket, which is something that we use on the rack. That is something in the eyes of the installer is much faster to put in, which hopefully reduces our labor. So then our resellers have hopefully a little bit of an advantage on when they're quoting what's going to set them apart, what's going to allow them to be more competitive in the marketplace. So we're constantly evolving and making our R&D guys cut their teeth on something new. So those are probably the two biggest things that Eddie's passionate about in what we do every day.
Yeah, and definitely talking to Eddie, a pro man, I could tell how passionate he is about customer service and making sure that, his customers are getting what they want and it's serving the purpose that they needed to serve. So let me ask you a question. You talked about innovation. I'm just curious, how does the process at SpaceGuard of innovation work? Is it somebody has an idea and then you guys work it out? How does that kind of play out? Like, how do you guys come up with a new product or a new variation of something that's already been out there?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And there's a number of ways that it comes to pass, but probably the two biggest would be internally. That could be any of us. Ray Niemeyer is a counterpart of mine on the outside sales side. Okay. He and I may see something out in the field and go back to Eddie and say, hey, man, it seems like if we just used this part that we're already making, we made a little bit of a tweak to it. Couldn't we do it this way? We get that from guys on the shop floor that may say, if we make this little change, it makes our life easier out here. What would that do for material costs, which would help drive down what the price that we sell it to the dealer and the end user, or what would that do for the installer? But then our biggest source really comes down to our customers. That could be the dealer, that could be the installer who says, hey, make this little change and my life gets easier. And we give that task then to the R&D department to say, can we do this? Or better yet, how are we going to make that happen? And then the other part is Eddie just looking, he's been around this material for a long period of time, just taking a very critical look and saying, how do we make life easier on ourselves and easier for everybody else? And I'll give you a real quick example. Sure. BeastWire came around by reducing, basically we took our legacy line of the SG-2000 and we had all different kinds of posts. So the post could be a corner, an end, an interior post. And if you're an installer and you have to sort through a large job and figure out which posts go where, that's time. That's cost that you didn't necessarily account for when you bid the project. So now our BeastWire posts are all the same. They're all punched the same on four sides, and we send out filler plugs so that the holes you're not using you can still cap off. It looks finished. but now a corner post is an end post is a line post, and your installer doesn't have to go sorting through a pile. They just pick one up and they start their layout. That's a little thing that saves an installer a lot of time and makes their life a lot easier.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Very interesting. Yeah, I was curious about that actually because it's very lean, continuous improvement type of thinking, and like you said, it's I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Akers, but he's like a big champion of lean.
Absolutely.
And 2-second lean. So he's always says fix the things that bug you. So I mean that's a perfect example
Absolutely.
right there. So so that's really cool to hear. Yeah, I was pretty interested to ask you about the innovation, so I'm happy you brought it up before I could. But
certainly happy to do it.
Yeah, so why don't we get into a little bit of the topic we're going to talk about today. So, safety is one of the biggest things and should be, in my opinion, the number one priority of any operation anywhere, because you have so much going on, especially now, so much more material handling equipment out there, and now automated stuff, all different types of things, and you want to protect people and protect equipment, all those different types of things. So what are you seeing out there, I guess, as you guys provide some safety and protective type of materials? What are you seeing out there that's happening, and what are people doing to kind of put things in place to protect either equipment, protect people, whatever the case may be? What do you guys really see the most of?
Well, probably one thing that is very appealing is the fact that safety is becoming more and more important to companies, and that's partially due to downtime, certainly due to workers' comp claims, all of those things.
Yeah.
And where we're seeing that is in a few different areas. Probably one of the bigger ones is the rack safety, where companies are taking the steps to put some sort of barrier at the back end of a rack to keep, if it opens up to a pedestrian aisle, a traffic aisle, or a production area, it keeps product from accidentally falling and injuring somebody or damaging the product. I mean, everything has a cost when an accident happens. And so, whether that's something like the beast wire, the rigid steel safety panels, or if you go to something like netting, companies are still taking it seriously and finding ways to help contain that product. But another way they're looking at it.
Actually, I had we talked about this actually already, but I had something happen in that case where we didn't have something in place, and it can be really scary. You're talking pallets
Absolutely.
that high in the air, 30, 40 feet in the air, falling all the way to the bottom, depending on what kind of product you have and the weight. It could be fatal at some point if somebody's there. So it's really good that you point that out. Sorry I cut you off. What were you saying there?
No, not at all. That is, you hit it right on the head. It's the fatality. You can replace a lot of product, and you don't like to write that kind of stuff off, but it's how do you replace a worker, even if they're just injured. They don't have to be killed, right? But even the injuries cause problems and cause delays in your facility. Some other ways that they're using the product, certainly machine guarding. E-commerce is, as everybody knows, is just blowing up, right? That is probably the largest growing sector of the economy right now.
Oh yeah.
And with e-commerce,
talked about that last week on the episode, and I think the person I interviewed said e-commerce has gone to like I think it was like $7 trillion or something in business.
Yes.
Just insane.
Yes. Right, and only growing. I think if you look at the numbers, and I don't have the percentages right, but
yeah.
But I want to say I've heard as little as 25% of the population is actually using e-commerce on a regular basis, but that number continues to grow at an astronomical rate every year as you get, the baby boomers are the ones that probably don't do it as much. They'll typically go to brick and mortar, but you're getting a lot of the younger generation that's coming up, right? And the balance is tipping in the other direction. They're not going to stores. So with the boom of e-commerce, what you're seeing is that industry itself, those people that the companies that are trying to get into the fulfillment market, how do you get there faster? Well, they're doing that by more complex robots. They're doing it by faster moving conveyors and sorters. And with that, all of those create potential hazards as they interact with humans. And so we're seeing a massive increase as it relates to robotics guarding and machine guarding just within that network of trying to keep people from getting caught by moving robots that are moving at a much faster pace than they were even 3 to 5 years ago, but also conveyor equipment that somebody could get just a piece of clothing caught in, or somehow even if the employee doesn't get injured, if they get close to some of these conveyors and they accidentally snag an e-stop, all of a sudden all of your products come to a screeching halt, and it causes a disruption. Yeah. Exactly right. So there's a lot of uses that are not necessarily some big scary piece of equipment. It comes down to just some of these pieces of equipment that are replacing what humans were doing even just a decade ago. We're now trying to keep people out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm sure you can attest to, but I'm sure that over just the last couple of years, as as you said, e-commerce has grown and distribution centers have just exploded. I know in my area where I'm at, I mean, it's like almost every other day, every other week that they're breaking ground on a new 500,000 square foot distribution center.
Right.
And everyone, seems bigger and bigger, and, everything goes up and taller, and I can only imagine the explosion you guys have seen or at least I hope the explosion that you've seen in safety measures being taken through protective guarding. Yeah. So what about, are you seeing mostly that people are implementing these safety guarding systems and taking these precautionary measures as they're building out systems, or are you seeing it more of an after the fact?
I would tell you right now, the vast majority of it would be an after the fact. The facility's been up and running, and that's not 100% across the board, but we see a lot of that because some of the legacy companies that are maybe just now turning from traditional fulfillment or traditional manufacturing and getting into more sophisticated high speed, they've been up and running for a while, and safety has been a different concern.
Yeah.
So we see quite a few of those people that are they're retrofitting and being somewhat reactive, not specifically to an accident, but maybe to, OSHA is very proactive about, in a positive way, about, supporting small to medium businesses to show them where some of their safety hazards may be, not coming out to find them, not coming out to cause trouble, but to say, hey, have you looked in these areas? So we're seeing a lot of that where people are recognizing the potential for safety issues in their existing facilities, but certainly it shouldn't be overshadowed at the fact that companies are taking it much more seriously. Insurance rates, as we all know, continue to climb. Workman's comp continues to climb. So how do you protect against that? It's a lot less expensive to put up some wire partition or wire rack safety, some of these other products. It's a lot less expensive to put those in place than it is to start paying out claims, pay higher insurance premiums, have that downtime or lost productivity. And so we're seeing a good mix of both. But it's certainly starting to trend towards people doing it on the front end. We're moving in that direction. But a lot of what we're doing right now is retrofits to people that have been around for a long time that are starting to recognize some of those safety concerns.
Interesting. So let me ask you a question. If you're gonna go, say you're gonna build out, worry about putting in your system first, is it gonna cost the customer more to retrofit at a later date, or is it gonna be more cost effective to build it into their initial design?
That's a great question. I think that in terms of the cost of the product, it's largely going to be neutral. For the most part, I don't think you'd have a big difference. Where you may run into an issue is, I'll use rack safety as an example.
Yeah.
If you install the rack safety panels at the time that the rack is going up, those racks are empty. In a lot of cases, they may not have put the beams on them yet, so it may be easier for the installers to go and throw these panels in when they're not working around product. So in some cases, that they have to, you may have to empty the racks out for them to put the safety panels up. So the cost may be more involved in the installation side versus actual material costs. Okay. That's where the biggest consideration probably needs to be addressed.
Got it. So from a safety standpoint, it would make more sense. I mean, I would say at least it makes more sense to build it into the initial design. And it sounds like it'd be somewhat of an easier install as well, from what you're saying.
For sure. Yep.
All right. So now, if you're looking to, put in either you're putting up a new distribution center, and you're planning out what your racking is going to look like, or your conveyor system, or maybe you're expanding your racking system, what would a build out look like if it was to incorporate in the initial design some type of guarding and racking protection? What would something like that look like, and what type of products would you want to incorporate into that design?
So there could be a whole host of products. Let's start with the racking side of it. Certainly we've talked about the rack safety where we're putting the rack backing in there. That's one area that you could be addressing a safety concern. The other part is you may look within the racking, you may have a high value product, whether it's a raw material or a finished product that is susceptible to loss or damage that you want to protect. So using our beast wire panels, we could either enclose an entire rack area, some smaller portion of the overall module of racking, okay, or we can go all the way down to just enclosing one section of rack and putting a biparting door or a sliding door on the front of that rack to where we're just enclosing a small area. So it gives you some options there as to really what do you need, what's the best use and best value that you're going to get out of that.
Interesting. Going
out from there within the facility, we could do everything from enclosing, and we do this on a regular basis. In a lot of cases, you'll have, in e-commerce, you'll have an elevated platform that has a number of lines of conveyor that are running across it. And it's sorting it up there. It's putting in its chutes for either shipping or put away, depending on where in the facility it is. Mm-hmm. And they want to control access. And so we would actually put wire partition all the way around that elevated structure and just have cutouts that would allow the conveyor to pass through along with the tote and whatever required clearance is. So you just have a little chute that tote or box would move through. But then the entire area is enclosed. And that, again, keeps people from either getting in contact that aren't maintenance personnel, getting in contact with high-moving or fast-moving equipment, or, again, potentially taking smaller product once it's been picked. Obviously, you can get down to very small pieces that people could put in pockets or backpacks, and now you have an issue with theft that you've addressed. Robotics areas where you're seeing a lot of these pick modules now that are virtually lights out, meaning they don't have any personnel in there. They have, essentially exit pass lighting, but, robots don't need lights to work in them. So these are very, dark structures, they don't need people in there that aren't maintenance personnel. So they'll enclose entire PIC modules with wire fencing and have some sort of interlock that shuts everything down once that gate is open. That's going to protect a worker that's in there doing maintenance or making a repair, but it keeps everybody else out from interacting with those robots or the moving equipment. And then something else that we're seeing more of on a number of different levels are things like driver's cages. At the dock doors, obviously, a lot of drivers need to go in and they need to check in whether they're picking up or dropping off. And when those drivers walk in, if you don't have a cage there or some way to contain them, that driver can walk throughout your facility.
Yeah, drivers, they love to just wander around. Let's say from experience,
And Kevin, you've seen them, but they don't necessarily have they don't come in with any sort of malicious intent. They may just be walking around, but they may not know that you have a dedicated travel aisle with fork trucks moving at high speed that are not expecting pedestrians to be there. And that's a recipe for disaster right there. You could have theft associated with that, but you could also have somebody that now has access to your facility that does intend to do harm. And with the heightened sense of awareness of workplace violence, it contains somebody from walking in and causing harm to your associates. And so things like driver's cages become much more important to customers to help contain some of that safety and security at a relatively open area of their facility.
Definitely, yeah, I agree. And I'm a big fan of the driver's cage because I've seen, like I mentioned before, from experience where, you do end up, for whatever reason, you're walking in a part of the warehouse and you just see a random person and, who are you? And they're a driver and they're just like kind of wandering around. And then, I had guys come out, like you were mentioning about the traveling and stuff, I have drivers show up in flip-flops and they're walking out in the middle of traveling or where pallets are and all that. I say, whoa, you can't be here. I don't want you to get hurt, first of all. And, people are not necessarily aware of the operation all the time and how it flows, and every operation is different. So, I think the driver's cage is like a huge, not only safety from, like you said, potential theft or workplace violence, but just keeping potential liability with driver safety as well. And sometimes you see I'm not trying to knock drivers here, but sometimes you have drivers, there's issues when shipping or something and it's delayed, and drivers can get irate and upset, and if there's not that barrier, sometimes you put your employees in a position that maybe you don't want to put them in as well. So I think that's definitely a great point, is to plan on installing one of those and putting one of those in the design as well. So now what about like cages and stuff like that? Now, oftentimes operations there's a lot of flexibility that's needed, and a lot of times the flow of material, flow of goods changes, volume changes, so you need to kind of move some things around. What is the flexibility of your product? Is it something like, if I have a cage that I set up, is that something I can easily move to a different part of the building?
It is, and I'll tell you, with both lines, they can be certainly torn down and repurposed in other areas of the facility, or taken with you if you were to grow into a larger building. And that's whether it be the 4 Logan which is our woven wire, or the Beast wire, which is welded. I'll give you a couple of advantages of going to the Beast wire, and we talked about it earlier. Having a universal post that is used for everything allows you to do a lot of reconfiguring, potentially with just the panels that you already have on site, because the panel itself is actually designed, it can be installed in any direction, vertically or horizontally, because of the way we have punched the frames to then be received into the post. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in the field, along with the fact that our hinge door is designed to be fully reversible. So it could hinge left or right, it can swing in or out. So if your needs change, you may not have to swap out what that door is.
Interesting.
So there's there's a lot of flexibility that we give then to you as a customer. If you want to say down the road, you've got a tool crib that now needs to become, a driver's cage as an example.
Yeah.
You may be able to use exactly what you have there, maybe add a part or two, or maybe you have a couple of parts left over, much less expensive repurposing of that using all those same materials.
That's great. That's great to know. Yeah, because a lot of things can change quickly in operation, and it's good to be able to reuse some things and be able to salvage stuff, because you start to change things around, the bill adds up pretty quickly after you're buying new stuff.
That it does.
Yeah,
it does, and it's very frustrating for an end user to look at and say, okay, I want to make this cage larger, I want to make it smaller, I want to use it somewhere else, and in their mind to say, okay, I now have to throw away X thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, just throw away because I can't reuse it, or the manufacturer's making it too difficult. We've really taken the guesswork, especially on the beast wire line, we've taken the guesswork out of what to reuse. And I'll tell you that our inside sales staff, they're kind of our first line of defense.
Yeah.
If somebody needs to redo, to revamp a cage, they are excellent looking at it saying, yep, you can reuse all these parts. Here's a new layout, and I need to sell you, one more post, two more panels, and a ceiling. Here's your new quote. And they really do a good job of making sure you know all of the steps and give you that confidence to reuse that existing product as you need.
Awesome. That's great to know. So back to the safety topic. So what kind of, I'm curious, what examples you may have of, safety incidents that have either occurred from your customers, and, what type of kind of resolutions did you come up to help them prevent those from happening again?
Sure. I can give you a couple more. We just talked about the driver's cage a couple minutes ago, and that was a real life example where we've had customers that have called up for all the reasons we discussed, whether it was a driver that was just wandering around, somebody that came in and actually stole or tried to steal product, as well as trying to prevent workplace or create workplace safety. But some others that I would tell you about is we'll go into we've talked about e-commerce as it's grown. You've seen these, as you mentioned, these million square foot buildings that go up, 40-foot ceilings, and they're putting in big racking or shelving pick modules. And they may still have employees, associates that walk around on these and they pick off the shelves or pick off the racks.
Yeah.
And what many of them were finding is if they get to the end of a shelving aisle, there may be a perimeter catwalk that allows them to get around the edge. They get onto a small step stool to pick something off of the upper shelves, and now they're at a height that 42-inch high handrail that is used on the perimeter is no longer adequate to protect them from falling over an edge.
Oh, it's kind of
and
out
so
of reach.
It is. It's if you stumble back, you may be higher than kind of that tipping point. And so we can go in with a 3-foot wide or 4-foot wide panel that's, say, 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And just to fix it at the end of the aisles. You don't have to put it down that entire catwalk. You just put it at the end of every aisle. So if somebody does happen to stumble backwards, they're going to have a 7-foot or 8-foot panel behind them as kind of a backstop to keep them from going over. It's a very simple solution, and it solves a number of problems. First of which is if you're trying to design handrail that is now 84 inches tall, you're asking that supplier, the manufacturer of that product, to come up with something brand new, and it's going to be likely very expensive.
Definitely.
It also, if you change the use of that pick module down the road and you no longer need an 84-inch or a taller fall protection, you're stuck with it if it's the handrail. But if you don't need it anymore, you can pull the panels down and you can use them somewhere else, or you can discard them. But now you've been able to revamp that space very economically and have it fit the new needs.
Yeah,
and we've done that. Exactly right. And you can always go back to the previous design by putting the panels back up at a later date. Rack safety is one that we've talked about, and what you and I have talked about so far has been more related to pushing product off and hitting somebody, but there's another aspect of it. In a lot of these racking modules, there is fire suppression. If you have back-to-back racking, there's typically about a 12-inch, what they call flue space between the rack uprights.
Yeah.
And the main purpose of that flue space is if a fire were to break out, they want that fire to go vertically. And that, rather than traveling horizontally, which could trap associates, by going vertically, it gives associates more time to get out. It also contains that fire in an area where maybe the fire suppression within those racking units can be more effective and contain the fire faster, less product loss, less potential harm to the associates. Well, it's very easy for a fork truck driver to push a pallet in, and either they push it too far so it gets into the flue space and disrupts flow, or if you've got a loose load, so you've got a pallet that isn't shrink wrapped or banded, and now a box or two falls off, it's in the flue space, now you're interrupting the flow of that fire suppression. And so it's not just so much to protect somebody from actually getting struck by a product or a box or a pallet, but it also is to keep from having a situation where a fire breaks out and it spreads horizontally rather than vertically, and you get the chance of somebody being trapped or injured by that fire moving too quickly.
Yeah, and you're kind of interfering with the other preventative measure that's in place, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we've even gone one step further with that, and we've done it for a couple of customers. It's not a widespread, but sometimes, depending on the product, you have to have a much higher density of fire suppression. It'll actually require that you put the heads right within that bay of racking, rather than a flue space right within the racking itself.
Yeah.
And of course, if a fork truck driver is pushing product in, they're not necessarily paying attention to where that fire suppression head is, and so they could continually just knock heads off.
Yeah.
And so now you've got the downtime of draining the system, changing the head, cleaning up the mess, all of those things. And so we've actually created panels, short panels that would go on the front of the racks that allow a little bit of clearance for the product to get in, but they are lower than the fire suppression head, so it protects that. Our panel is going to take the hit before your fire suppression does, and it's a lot faster and a lot cheaper to replace one of our panels, a 6-inch tall panel, than it is to try and shut things down to replace a fire suppression head. So again, another safety measure it's a soft benefit, but it's one that you only need to break a couple of heads to realize how expensive, and both in time and money, that something like that really is.
Yeah, that's no fun.
No, it's not. I'm sure you know it well.
Yes, yeah. All right, so is there anything else that we should know about SpaceGuard products?
I think you've given me a great opportunity to share it. I mean, we play in a great market of, as we say, secure, guard, and protect. Our biggest assets, as we talked about earlier, is we've got just a fantastic group inside that makes sure that customer service is their number one priority, and have so much fun looking for new and innovative ways. We love a challenge. So that's the other thing I'd tell you is, if there's listeners out there that think they have a need, but they're not quite finding that unique fit, we'd love to talk to you about it. We're going through research and development on a couple of projects that are a little bit out there. So we're always happy to take a look, and we'll be honest with you if we can't do it too.
Okay, awesome. And how can people find out more information about SpaceGuard?
So the easiest part, our website is www.spaceguardproducts.com. And that'll take you to the main site, which allows you to look at both the BeastWire line, which we talked about, as well as the Ford Logan line, and gives you an opportunity to see the overall look of what we can do and what our capabilities are.
Awesome, and we'll definitely post that on our website as well at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you.
So, John, thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope you enjoyed your experience on the New Warehouse podcast.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.